अक्षरमनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्र गमचिन्त्यं च कूटस्थमचलं ध्रुवम् सन्नियम्येन्द्रियग्रामं सर्वत्र समबुद्धयः ते प्राप्नुवन्ति मामेव सर्वभूतहिते रताः क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखम् देहवद्भिरवाप्यते ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्ता मृत्युसंसारसागरात् भवामि न चिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशितचेतसाम् मय्येव मन आधत्स्व मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवसिष्यसि मय्येव अत ऊर्ध्वं न संशयः अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगेन ततः मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय अभ्यासेऽप्यसमर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थमपि कर्माणि कुर्वन् सिद्धिमवाप्स्यसि अथैतदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुं मद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं ततः कुरु यतात्मवान् श्रेयो हि ज्ञानमभ्यासात् ज्ञानाध्यानं विशिष्यते ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागः त्यागाच्छान्तिरनन्तरम् अद्वेष्टा सर्वभूतानां मैत्रः करुण एव च निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः समदुःखसुखक्षमी सन्तुष्टः सततं योगी यतात्मा दृढनिश्चयः मय्यर्पितमनो बुद्धिः यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः यस्मान्नो द्विजते लोकः लोकान् नो द्विजते च यः हर्षामर्षभयोद्वेगैः मुक्तो यः स च मे प्रियः अनपेक्षशुचिर्दक्षः उदासीनो गतव्यथः सर्वारम्भपरित्यागी यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः यो न हृष्यति न द्वेष्टि न शोचति न काङ्क्षति शुभाशुभपरित्यागी भक्तिमान् यः स मे प्रियः समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समः सङ्गविवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतस्थिरमतिः भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः ये तु धर्म्यामृतमिदं यथोक्तं पर्युपासते श्रद्धानामत्परमाः भक्तास्तेतीव मे प्रियाः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे भक्तियोगो नाम द्वादशोऽध्यायः।
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. I'm assuming you all can hear me. I'm Satish Kaluri, and on behalf of Sri Balaji Temple of Great Lakes, I welcome you once again for another exciting 4-week Bhagavad Gita lecture series. We hope you utilize the Clarion call for Bhakti lecture by Srimati Dr. Sunitha Grandhee ji in your day-to-day life. For those of you who are not familiar or new to the temple, Sri Balaji Temple of Great Lakes is located in West Bloomfield, Michigan, a traditional temple with Venkateshwara Perumal and Tyre's blessings. The temple has been serving people of Hindu community for over 15 years. Our temple seeks to serve the spiritual needs of the Hindu community throughout the Detroit area, providing religious services, community activities such as this to further the spiritual growth. It is my great pleasure to give you an introduction of Srimati Dr. Sunitha Grandhee ji. Dr. Sunitha Grandhee ji has been a Sevika with Chinmaya Mission Ann Arbor for over 29 years under the able guidance of Srimati Sharda Kumarji. As a Vedanta teacher, she now serves full-time in taking Vedanta classes and at Balbihar. A PhD in organic chemistry, she has served many managerial roles at BASF and GE Bayer. completing the 2-year residential Vedanta course in Mumbai under the tutelage of Acharya Swami Bodhatmanandaji and His Holiness Swami Swarupanandaji. She went through a rigorous structured approach in Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, various Prakarana Granthas, Brahma Sutras, Bhagavatam, and Ramayana. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sunitha ji. Before I turn it over to Dr. Sunitha ji, just a quick request to the participants. If you could please, obviously I'm allowed to mute you all, but also to turn off the video so Dr. Sunitha ji will get the full bandwidth. And also that these videos will be posted on the YouTube channel of the Balaji Temple and also shared live on the Facebook page. Without further interruption, I'll turn it over to Sunitha ji. Sunitha ji, you could start sharing your screen and should we all be set?
This works.
Yep, we are able to see you. I'll go myself on mute.
You're able to see my full screen there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good, very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are able to see your notes also.
Oh, you're able, okay, so that's what the problem is. Let's see.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Oh, but I still need to get to the presenter mode. And now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ashokji is always there to help.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Hari Om and pranams to everyone. I would like to get this lecture series with the grace of Lord Narayana and the blessings of the Guru Parampara, starting with Puja Swami Gurudev, Swami Chinmayananda, Gurudev, Swami Tejomayananda, Swami Swarupananda, Swami Bodhatmananda, and our own Acharya Sharda Kumar, and with the support of all of you, I would like to get started on this series. So let's start with the prayers. Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya, Surya Koti Samaprabha, Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva, Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada, Saraswati Namastubhyam, Varade Kamarupini, Vidyarambham Karishyami, Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada, Samasta Jana Kalyane, Niratam Karunamayam, Namami Chinmayam Devam, Sadgurum Brahma Vidwaram. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I want to also thank the Balaji Temple for giving me this opportunity to share what little I have gathered from our course at Sandipani on the topic of Bhakti and on the topic of the chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita. Before we get started on the topic, let us chant the Gita Dhyanam together. I have it on the screen out here also, so you can see this. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishana Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pratipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrudaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandanaha Parto Vatsasudhir Bhokta Dugdam Geetamritam Mahat Vasudev Vasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmatro Tata Jayatra Tajala Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashvattama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavairana Nadi Kaivatraka Keshavaha Parasharya Vachas Saroja Mamalam Geetartha Gandhotkatam Nanakyanaka Kesaram Harikada Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadaira Haraha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rutra Marutaha Sunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyaha Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So, what is today's condition now? To say that we are living in uncertain times is a massive understatement. Coronavirus, riots, our election coming up. Life has never been so uncertain as it is today. It is nearly impossible to escape at even a global level, and what to talk about our immediate level. The unending stream of uncertainty with the virus and many other issues which are thrown at us. So sometimes it looks like we are instability on steroids. Such conditions can actually try even the most sane, steady person. So how do we handle such uncertainty and ambiguity? While no one can predict, with confidence what's going to happen with the virus, it certainly looks like we better get used to this uncertainty. It seems like uncertainty is going to be part and parcel of our life. And once I know how to handle this, it can really take us away from any kind of anxiety, any kind of helplessness, any kind of apprehension. Perhaps this has come as a trigger for us to reflect on how I can make meaningful changes in myself. How can I make adjustments to bring more meaning to my life? So a prudent person may ask, what can I do to help myself, my family? And even at work, what can I do to help my work, my team, everything? This question really acknowledges that the dynamics on how we are living and what has led to it is actually quite unique. And it may need a different kind of approach, something which I think most people would find it difficult to understand, that even such an approach can work in all situations. And such approach and such approaches are really in our Shastras, in our own Bhagavad Gita. And this is something that we need to learn in order to strengthen ourselves in such uncertain times, so that we learn to conquer our challenges and we don't become paralyzed by such uncertainties. And we find stability in these chaos, and to learn with ambiguity and accept life's paradoxes. Big words, big sentences, but that is the only way we can address the only uncertainty in our, only certainty in our life. What we're waiting for, what are we waiting for? We want to make sure that we have the mental discipline and the toughness in order to handle this. And this is why we need a clarion call for bhakti. This is why we need bhakti in our lives, to recognize that as much as I can do, I'm not the controller of even my own actions. There is a controller who is much, much bigger than us. It's almost like looking at us from a 50,000 feet high and really understanding there is this huge controller over us who's actually taking care of everything that is happening. And he is there to guide and to take care of us and to give us this great ability of the issues that we're facing today. And that is the idea which we are looking at on how to deal with this uncertain times. And this is where we see that all these things that point out in terms of perplexion, indecision, and many other things can be handled by one thing, and that is the world needs love, the world needs faith. And that is what we are going to discuss for the next 4 weeks in this clarion call for bhakti. So what does bhakti mean? I'm sure there must be many definitions that you are already aware of. I know in English we talk about bhakti as being devotion, but let's get to the root of bhakti. And what do I mean by that? Well, it is the root of bhakti, the word. The root of bhakti comes from the word bhaj. Bhaj, which means attached or devoted. It means the pure, unselfish love, which is mixed with reverence. And bhakti is the basis of all religious life. And when I say religion, as Gurudev always points out, religion is actually the way of life. It is really how our life has to be led through all the rituals which make up the religion, and of which spirituality is the backbone on which religion stands. So bhakti can be constituted also as a basis of all religious life. Bhakti destroys vasanas. I'm sure some of you are going to look at this and say, wow, that's simple? Is it that simple to just get rid of all my vasanas? Yes. Vasanas can be destroyed, and more importantly, ego. Our egoism is destroyed with bhakti. Bhakti elevates us, the mind, to magnanimous levels. It is the master key to open the chambers of wisdom. It culminates in jnanam. So what begins in two finally ends in one. So for those, who fight to this point that, what is superior, bhakti or jnanam? Well, they are only groping in darkness. They have not really understood the right tattva, that the parabhakti, that is the ultimate bhakti, and jnanam is all one. And bhakti or devotion in the form of anurag or attachment to the Lord leads to the highest good or the attainment of God realization. We have a great example in Bhagavatam. So in Bhagavatam, we have Prahlada, who says that, "O Lord Hari, may I have the same sort of the profound abiding love for thee, which the materialistic people cherish in all the material objects." So that which the worldly people cherish for those temporary happiness that they get out of objects, let me have that same thing towards thee. So may not that bliss disappear from my heart when I think of this. Isn't that a beautiful definition of bhakti? So those thoughts have emanated in Prahlada's heart, and they're charged with intense feeling and devotion. So for us who get attached to all these finite, imperishable objects as phone or house, or even our people around, if I can only address it, direct it towards that ultimate eternal bliss, then that infinite bliss is totally assured for me. So a bhakta is therefore who aspires to something imperishable and infinite. That's the simple difference, and that's the simple definition of bhakti. While we spend our time on this finite, perishable, fleeting happiness, a true bhakta devotes his time towards that infinite, that absolute bliss, that bliss which is imperishable. And that's what bhakti is all about. I know many of you are going to say, but isn't that what jnanam is also? Yes. And that's why I said bhakti culminates in jnanam, and what was two becomes one, and that is where bhakti ends. So in bhakti, there is no deep learning, no deep erudition of Vedas is needed. All what is needed is a complete surrender to that Lord, where we understand that that Lord is the absolute, and that Lord is where my heart is. And we see these many different examples in this, of where there was no necessity to have that erudition or that advanced learning. For example, we had Tukaram. Tukaram was an illiterate peasant. He could not even sign his name. But look how through the devotion of and grace of Lord Krishna, he was able to write those famous abhangs, which today we can hear that through many of our modern classical singers. And even when you look at Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's life, who was also an illiterate, when he lived in Dakshineshwar, he got the divine knowledge through the grace of Mother Kali and his guru, Swami Totapuri. So from all these careful study of the lives of two saints, it's clear that there is a fountain of knowledge within the heart, and anyone can tap into this source through sincere devotion. I go to Lord Narayana or Lord Shiva or Lord Krishna. This is Bhakti Yoga. I am the self in all. This is Jnana Yoga. So in Bhakti, so that is why we say that Bhakti culminates in Jnana. In Bhakti, we have three things. We have the Bhakta or the lover, the beloved or the Ishta Devata, or where my Alambanam is, and love, as simple as that. As soon as the Bhakta recognizes that he is identical with the beloved, there is an end of Bhakti, or there is a merge of the Bhakti, or there is a merging of both Bhakti and Jnana together. The duality completely vanishes. Who is there and to whom is he loving? So that, my friends, is in short what Bhakti is. And you can see when we have that kind of feeling of Bhakti in us, then where is uncertainty? Where is the division that we all are looking in people? Where is the fleeting happiness that I'm looking at? So a clarion call for Bhakti is what is needed today. And how better can we soak ourselves in Bhakti? And how else can we really understand about Bhakti is none other than where we have this beautiful chapter of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, which epitomizes Bhakti Yoga. It starts actually, it's a very small chapter. You can see it is only 20 shloka. And out of these 20 shlokas, it starts with the question of Arjuna to Lord Krishna as the very first shloka. And then in a simple discourse of just mere 19 verses, Lord Krishna gives an exhaustive reply to this one question of Arjuna. And what is so unique about this chapter is, in just about 20 verses, it is a complete treatise of bhakti. It's a perfect artistic piece of literature with regard to thought development, with regard to how literally maybe even a PhD thesis can be written, because it has all the elements of bhakti. And Bhagwan Shri Krishna, or Vedavyasa in this case, who wrote the Mahabharata, in which we have Bhagavad Gita nestled in it, it points out this entire path of devotion. And so what are the components in this Bhagavad Gita chapter 12? Let us see that. It talks about, first, what is devotion? What is the nature of devotion? Who is God? What is the nature of God? What is the nature of the devotees? What is the practice of devotion? So all this is looked at. So it's complete in that sense of you have a description of the bhakta, you have the description of the idol of worship or the alambanam, as I said. So you have that, the altar of worship, and then you have the bhakti sadhanas. And then along with that, what are the difficulties that one can undergo in this path of bhakti? And how is it solved? So we have in here about what we call this as a ladder of hope. When I say ladder of hope, depending upon who the adhikari is, to that adhikari, there is a certain sadhana which can be used for that person to evolve to the next step in the ladder of bhakti. And then we talked about a role model. Here in this chapter, literally, we have about 36 qualities of a true bhakta. What more do we need? Everything compressed in this beautiful, smallest chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I know you're going to say that, well, isn't 15th chapter also the smallest? Not really, because 15th chapter actually has a few shlokas which are a little bigger meters, whereas the 12th chapter, one can memorize it really quickly. So how about if we have a challenge? By end of this series of 4 weeks, we are going to memorize all 20 of these shlokas of chapter 12. Are you with me? Let me know. I think this would be a great summer project for us, easy to do. And once I'm done, I'm going to be having all the qualities. I'm going to have all the sadhanas done. And I don't care about coronavirus. I don't care about what's happening because I am in the embrace of that Lord himself. So that is bhakti in short, in nutshell. Let us now get into Bhagavad Gita itself. Before we get to chapter 12, we should understand what is Bhagavad Gita trying to teach me? How can I put myself in the role of Arjuna, who was going through so much of confusion, right? So, first of all, the Bhagavad Gita is like the mother. In the last line of that first shloka of Gita Dhyanam, which we just recited, you see Bhagavan Vedavyasa addresses Gita as none other than Mother herself. A mother is always full of love and compassion, and she is the first guru for all of us. So just like that learning which takes place from the mother to the children of any age, we can also confidently turn to Bhagavad Gita and expect nothing but the pure bhakti or total unconditional love. So in our spiritual journey, Bhagavad Gita is literally our mother. And Gita, as all of you know, and I'm not going to spend too much time on the introduction here, but just to give you a synopsis, Gita begins with a confusion in the mind of Arjuna. And the mind of Arjuna is our minds, because as we go through our lives, our mind is wavering, leads to all the arrow marks that I showed in that previous slide of confusion, delusion, indecision. So we see that Arjuna, here we see him here, Arjuna, who is with Lord Krishna on a chariot, near the chariot here, in the midst of the armies. And we see here that Lord Krishna is the Sarathi. And you have Arjuna, who is the Rati here, who has his body-mind awareness, which we call as Rataha, who is the owner of the chariot, right? Now, what is interesting out here is you have the charioteer, who is Lord Krishna, is being commanded by Arjuna, who is driving the chariot. And this is how our life is. We give our shopping list and we tell Bhagwan what we need from him. We are not listening to him. So at the present moment, all of us think who we are. We think we are in control of everything in our lives. And we ask Bhagwan to do what we want him to do. And we also tell him it has to be done in a certain way, at a certain time, Like, for example, with the virus, we are asking him to disappear, go away. Well, it will go in its own time. And it's the same thing with the other issues. We always pray to him and ask him to do exactly how we want. So we are as though commanding him to do things. Is that not true? So when everything is going on well, so to Arjuna saying, I want you to put the chariot in front of everyone. And Lord Krishna agrees to it. He says, your wish is my command. So he takes the chariot right there. And as soon as he puts it right there, you see that he gets confused whether he should fight or not. And he doesn't know what to do. He has what we call as shoka and moha. We saw that in chapter 1 and chapter 2, in the beginning of chapter 2 as well. But most of chapter 1 was the moha that Arjuna goes through. And knowing this will happen, Krishna smiles and then he asks, so what is your decision right now? He says, well, I don't know what to do. And then he just collapses. So too in our lives, when we realize that not everything is going to happen according to our own whims and fancies, and when we face these uncertainties, so he says, Bhagwan, hey Bhagwan, kuch karo ab. And should we wait for such a thing to happen to this? Should we not just have him in our lives as a friend all the time so we don't have to keep running to him and telling him what he should be doing? So we see that when Arjuna says, Senayor Ubayor Madhye, then Krishna says, okay, I've done this. And when he gets confused, then he says, Shishyaste ham shadimam tvam prapannam. So now I am your student. So that is the starting of bhakti or devotion as we can see it. Even though, of course, Arjuna doesn't recognize that Lord Krishna, his friend, is that Bhagwan much later, but that's the starting of the point of where bhakti really starts. And we see that we have to recognize that the knowledge, that understanding, and that wisdom which starts at that point allows us to take care of this equipment, which is our mind, and helps us to really handle our emotions really well. And it prevents us from going round and round, as we see in chapter 2 again, a beautiful shloka which says, Daurena hyavaram karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya, buddho sharanam anvicha, kripana phala hetavaha. So surrendering to that wisdom and understanding that karma will not take me too far unless I have that attitude of surrender and refuge. So having said that, Lord Krishna reminds Arjuna about what the final goal is, what needs to be reached, and the final goal being to understand at the highest level what the nature of Tvam is, or you, and how that Tvam and Tat through Asi are similar. So this is something that we try to understand. And until up to in chapter 11, where we see the Virat Rupa of Lord Krishna, or Lord Narayana, or Ishvara, as we can say it. And up till there, he recognizes that the ability to recognize that Lord Narayana, that Lord Krishna, is the highest goal for me to reach. And that goal is none other than myself. It needs nothing but Ananya Bhakti. And that Ananya Bhakti is also called as Avicharanya Bhaktya. So this is what we saw in the chapter 11. And I'm putting this shlokas from chapter 11 as an important prelude to the Bhakti Yoga itself. So we see that in shloka number 54, where we see Evam Drashtum Shakyate Drashtum Jnaptam, where I know, I see, and I enter into enter into, I enter into that, and with this undeviated devotion alone, you'll be able to enter into my nature and become one with that. That is the highest goal, is pointed out in this shloka here, but it is also pointed out a lot of times in Upanishad that that which is in me is in everyone. And then yamam tasya chame pranashyati, he who sees me and all does not disappear from a vision, such a person does not lose his vision when he understands his role and how he's connected to that Bhagavan. And we see in Kathopanishad as well, when one chooses exclusively Bhagavan, then that Bhagavan is revealed to him. So one may ask a question at this point, saying that, should he not really reveal himself to everybody? Well, the question is, how much am I really seeking him out? That is the question. At the end of the day, a real devotee or a bhakta is the one who seeks Lord exclusively and excluding everything else, but focusing only on that Lord. And that is the practice of devotion, which we see in Bhagavad Gita in the shlokas up till here, and where you see semblance of Lord being shown as the Saguna Kara Rupa as well as the Nirakara Rupa, and which we'll be touching upon in different shlokas as we're moving forward. And that is seen, and with only true devotion can you move forward. So in this whole Bhagavad Gita, we saw that the first 6 chapters focuses upon the individual jiva. If you look at the Mahavakya of Tat Tvam Asi, Tvam, which represents the jiva, is discussed in chapters 1 to 6. And then we have from 7 to 12 is the Tat Pada, or that, or referring to that absolute reality. And now we have at the end of that Tad, when chapter 11 is over, where the vision of that absolute reality is shown in the form of Vishwarupa, you have Arjuna, who gets a little confused. He recognizes so far what the role is, but he also sees a vision and wants to have more answers in understanding true devotion. And that is how the question is posed by Arjuna. So the question by Arjuna is, who is a better yogi? Are the devotees who always worship you in a form, or is it that devotee who worships the imperishable or that absolute form, Brahman? Who is a better yogi? So let us see that shloka here. So this starts off with the question of Arjuna to Lord Krishna. Who is the better yogi? So let's chant this. Atha dvadashodhyayah Arjuna uvacha evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam tesham ke yoga vittamaha evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. So the simple words, he says, thus ever steadfast, those devotees who worship you, and also those who worship the imperishable or the unmanifest, who is better in yoga? That's a simple question. So if you look at the question, it starts with the word thus. So this obviously means that there has to be a prelude to it, right? So Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya in his Bhashya beautifully connects this 12th chapter to the 11th chapter. And the connecting shloka, which I'm going to put it up here for you, is this shloka, which is Mat karma krit mat paramaha mad bhakta sanga varjitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yasama nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yasamamiti pandava mat karma krit mat paramaha mad bhakta sanga varjitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yasamamiti pandava. So you see, it's a very powerful, beautiful shloka, and our Acharya Swami Buddhatmananda would say that this literally gives you the essence of Bhagavad Gita in this one shloka, which talks about Bhakti Yoga. So he says, Lord Krishna says, whoever acts for me only, mat karma krit, mat paramaha, who regards me as param, who regards me as supreme, mad bhaktaha, who is devoted to me and who is free of attachment, sanga varjitaha, nirvairaha sarva bhuteshu, he bears no enmity at all towards any creature, and such a person is my bhakta. So this is the shloka which connects the shloka of chapter 12. The word thus starts from this particular thing. This is how, so Arjuna heard this, and therefore he wants to know who is really the real bhakta, okay, and who is, so evam, satata yuktaye, who is very steadfast, who is always continuously worshipping you, satata yuktaye, bhaktas tvam, those devotees, bhaktas tvam paryupasate, who worship you, paryupasate, who worships you, ye cha api aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. So he's asking this ye cha api. So ye refers to both the devotees. One is the devotees who worship the Lord in the form, and the second refers to those devotees who basically worship the Lord in the form of aksharam, in the form of avyaktam, which is unmanifest, and aksharam, which is imperishable. So who is the best of them? So here the interesting thing is, now we see that bhakti in its true essence. We see bhakti which can be seen in both the aspect of worshipping a form and worshipping also somebody without form, right? So we have, and he doesn't necessarily ask for, okay, among the people, is it just man versus woman, or this person versus that person? This shloka is such a complete question because it covers really all religions, all religions which uses form and religions which don't use form. So it is a complete question from that. A person can be a Devi Bhakta, a person can be a Shiva Bhakta, Krishna Bhakta, but then the question is valid for all of them. So what do you think? Do you think Krishna is going to now say, yes, I like this particular devotee, and I think this particular devotee is going to be better than the other? Do you think that is what he's going to say? Well, let's look at the next shlokam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Veshya Mano Ye Mam Maya Veshya Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Maya Veshya Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayo Petaha Shraddhaya Parayo Petaha Te me Yuktatamam Mataha Te me Yuktatamam Mataha. So Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. So the teachings of the 12th chapter starts with this second shloka. And so Lord Krishna is saying, Maya Mayi Aveshya Manaha. So fix your mind on me. Okay, Mayi Aveshya Manaha. So those who worship me by fixing their mind on me, Nitya Yukta Upasate, who are continuously, who are very steadfast in their worship by fixing their mind, and Shraddhaya Parayo Petaha. Shraddhaya, which is having great faith, supreme faith, they, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. So you see, the answer to the question which Arjuna raised is not really black and white, right? Those who are the worshippers of the abstract nature of the truth versus those who are worshippers of that God or Lord in the form with characteristics. So it's for both, this really applies. Right? So, but then you will see that this is truly addressing that is who they are. So we will see who exactly is addressing, right? So it's just like this, you know, when two people are, say, dating, or when you're trying to hire somebody from, HR is trying to hire somebody, you won't apply. And the first thing you see is really the physical form, but then later, the physical form doesn't mean much to you at all, right? Later, what you focus on more are the qualities. And then finally, we go even beyond the qualities, and then we love the person for that person. We go beyond the form. So this shloka is trying to say that whether it's form or no form, at the end of the day, what is important for me is those three things. First of all, that the person is Mai Avesha Manaha, which is the person is completely devoted to me. The person is completely absorbed in me. That is the absorption that Lord Krishna is asking for. In today's world, what happens is we are so self-absorbed in ourselves. And when we are so self-absorbed, we don't notice what is happening around us. We are not alert to the possibilities that exist beyond us. So right away, this is another way that Lord Krishna is saying that fix your mind on me. Fixing your mind not just partially, not just something that I do when I go to the temple. All I'm worried about there is when I'm in front of the Lord, that even as the Lord is in front of me, I'm thinking about myself and what I want from the Lord. No, fixing your mind completely refers to 100% recognition of the fact that that Lord is that absolute, and that Lord is the only thing, only person, only thing all the way around, in and everywhere. And that is fixing my mind, your mind on me. And so in that sense, this is so powerful. So ye mam upasate. those who worship me as that absolute Lord, not as Vasudeva Putra Krishna, not as Lord Shiva, not as this, something even beyond that, something beyond that form of characteristics, something which I go beyond that. When I worship such a Lord with my mind completely, with my Lord of my heart, and then, so that is the aspect what we see in this shloka. So the mind is completely without any thoughts of myself. The mind is completely with the thoughts of the Lord. And when that happens, the peace and the tranquility that I feel is Mayi Aveshya Manaha. So Aveshya is, if you look at it from a Sanskrit point of view, Vesh comes from the root vish, which means to enter. And this wish is also what we see, for example, Graha Pravesh. Graha Pravesh is another word where we have wish or entrance, the first entrance into a house. So that kind of an entrance into the mind, into the heart of the Lord, which is done with complete faith. And that faith, which is based on 100% conviction. For example, if I'm happy, I don't have to prove it. It is my own experience. And that is what the faith or Shraddha that is asked for us. And this Shraddha is something we will be talking more as we go to the future further shlokas. But it is out of complete understanding and correct knowledge of that belief. It is not a blind belief, but it is that absolute belief with complete trust. So when I worship with complete trust into that Lord, by 100% of myself having surrendered to that Lord and fixing the mind with ever steadfast, they are, in Lord Krishna's opinion, the best of the yogis. So you can see that whether the question doesn't necessarily address Arjuna's question, which is Yoga Vittamaha, who are the best knowers of yoga. But he answers this by saying that Yukta Tama Mataha, they are the ones who are united with me, Yukta Tama, so which is the best knowers of the yoga. A Mataha, which means that in my opinion, or in my faith, in my philosophy, or this is what I believe in, this is what Lord Krishna himself is saying as Yuktatama Mataha. One other word which is very important here to recognize, which we'll spend a little time here, but next week when we meet, I want to give you some beautiful definitions of Upasana from Bhagwan Shankaracharya Ji's Bhashya itself. But Upasanam means, Upa means near, and Asanam means a seat. So Upasanam means sitting near. So when we sit near the Lord, does that mean that I'm 100% near the Lord? I could be sitting there, but my mind can be wandering all over, right? So that is not what is meant by what is said here. Here, Upasanam basically means when I'm sitting near the Lord and my mind is 100% focused on the Lord. We see that today in our multitasking generation, we find that we are constantly not satisfied by just doing one thing, but we are used to so much with multitasking that this word Upasanam is a reminder on what my attitude should be when I'm sitting in front of the Lord, where I see that I need to focus my attention completely and totally on that Lord when I'm sitting. So each word in these shlokas means so much. Mayi Aveshya Manaha, So Manaha, which is entering completely into me. Nitya, which is always, continuously. And Yukta, united. Upasate. So sitting here, having my mind completely entering into the Lord and also not wavering. And to know this with complete conviction and Shraddha on that absolute Lord, te me yuktatama mataha. So such a person is important for me. Such a person are the best in yoga. So that's verse number 2. And let us see now for moving forward, we will just chant the shlokas because I see that we have just one more minute here. We will chant the shlokas and we will move on to understanding the deeper import of the shlokas in next week. So verses 3 and 4 now refers to those worshippers who worship on the formless. So we will see as we move on that shlokas 3 and 4 will be addressing the worshippers of the formless. And then we move on to those devotees who worship the Lord with form. And from there on, we will see some sadhanas associated for the worshippers. And then finally, we will be coming to the qualities of the bhaktas. So verse 3, Ye tvaksharamanirdeshyam, Ye tvaksharamanirdeshyam, Avyaktam paryupasate, Avyaktam paryupasate, Sarvatra gamachintyam cha, Sarvatra gamachintyam cha, Kutastamachalam dhruvam, Kutastamachalam dhruvam, Sanniyam yendriya gramam, Sanniyam yendriya gramam, Sarvatra samabuddhayaha, Sarvatra samabuddhayaha, Te prapnuvanti mameva, Te prapnuvanti mameva, Sarvabhutahite rataha, Sarvabhutahite rataha. Ye tvakshamanir deshyam, Avyaktam paryupasate, Sarvatra gamachintyam cha, Kutastamachalam dhruvam, Sanniyam yendriya gramam, Sarvatra samabuddhayaha, Te prapnuvanti mameva, Sarvabhutahite rataha. We will stop here. So we looked into today why we need bhakti at such times. We understood what bhakti means. We also understood the question that Arjuna raised to Lord Krishna, and which is a very important question for all of us as well, to understand what kind of an adhikari am I, what kind of sadhak am I, and this will help me to understand the kind of sadhana that I need to do in order to move forward. And next, we saw Lord Krishna addressing Arjuna's question by explaining the qualities of that perfect devotee. And then we will see, moving forward, the type of devotees in the next few classes. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Hari Om. Namaste. Radhe Radhe.